All right, let's talk about mosses and ferns as our first example of land plants. And I am going to go ahead and flesh out our plant cladogram. Come on. And I'm going to, the fungi, I had the cladogram flipped. But the plants, I'm going to keep them the same as we have been doing so that it just plugs really nicely into our existing giant cladogram that we're going to talk about at the very end of this. So remember, algae are our outgroup. And then we have this. Now, all of these guys have chlorophyll in their chloroplasts. And this is the characteristic that defines this group. They all have the chlorophyll, which allows them to photosynthesize the way we're familiar with. This is the what we learned about, I think it was lecture 10. I think it was. Now, our first group of land plants that branches off. Now think about this. What happened? Literally, these plant-like critters were existing in the water, in the ocean. And they were like, I'm looking up there at there's land up there and there's not much stuff up there. I wonder if we could colonize that land. And there are some advantages to colonizing the land. For example, it is much more accessible CO2 in air versus in water. So there's more carbon dioxide available. And why do plants care about carbon dioxide? That plus sunshine is food. So having better access to carbon dioxide is actually a really big benefit to being on land. The other thing you need for your food is sunshine. And sunshine is more plentiful if you are on land than if you are in water. So really, these are two things that, two motivators, two benefits for moving onto land. However, all their reproductive strategies, alternation of generations, had to take place in water. So the first group are the bryophytes, which are mosses. This is our example critter. The mosses are bryophytes. And the bryophytes were unable to do their reproduction without water. They still had to have water in order to do this, but they were able to move onto land. And then the ferns got water tubes. They got water vasculature, actually everybody beyond this, and they're called pteridophytes. Pteridophytes are ferns. And these are the two groups that we're going to talk about right now. Everybody beyond has water tubes, and we'll keep filling this out with the next two groups. But let's look at the mosses first. Like, what is going on with these mosses? Let's look at their characteristics. First of all, you're familiar with mosses, right? I actually included a picture of a lichen. I think we need can you see this? Those are lichens. And this is the moss. What? And this is all moss. Now, here's the cool thing about mosses. The gametophyte is dominant, which means the bulk of the moss body that you see is actually gametophyte. And tell me if you've ever seen these when you go out into the world and you're looking at mosses. Have you ever seen these, like, I don't know, they're like twangers that are coming up. They almost look like flowers, but they never actually have flowers on them. Those are sporophytes, you guys. These things right here. I need so many colors, so many colors. Look, these things I just circled, and now you can't see that. These are the sporophytes. Remember, sporophytes are diploid and gametophytes are haploid. So they're like sort of stuck together, but when you see mosses, they're actually, the bulk of the body is haploid. So this would be haploid. That guy that I circled on the tree is also haploid. You can see how the lichens look really similar, but lichens tend to have a little bit of a rubbery quality that's different than plant. I'm thinking about, the wet lichens, but there are also lichens that grow on rocks. Like when rocks get all those really pretty colors on them, that's often a lichen. And there's like super dry, hangy lichen. It's not like, we often think that stuff is moss, but it is lichen. So there's great diversity, in plants and fungi, lichens and mosses. And these guys have the gametophyte dominant. Let's look at the next one, which is a fern. And I'm pretty sure that I have a picture of, goody, I do. So the fern, the pteridophyte, has the water tubes. So now this plant can go they have roots and water tubes, which just means they don't have to be hanging out in such a wet environment. The mosses, no water tubes, no roots, which means that you have to rain on them in order to have the cells have enough water. And all life needs water. If you are going to venture onto land, if you're going to leave your watery environment and come to land, you have to have a way to keep water in your giddy up. Mosses are like, well, I guess I just have to stay where it rains because otherwise I will die. Ferns were like, hey, I'm going to build these little tubes that will allow me to distribute water and conserve water more effectively. Ferns also get kind of that waxy covering on their big old leaves, and that can also be a feature that conserves water. And then they have roots. So now they can also pull water from the surrounding soil, which just makes them more efficient. Ferns, the dominant plant is the sporophyte. And what I've shown you here is a sporophyte leaf. So this is a diploid plant body, and on its underside, have you ever seen these when you go looking at ferns in the forest? If you look underneath the fern leaves, you'll often see these really amazing, cool, round structures that are actually balls of spores. And remember, those spores are the haploid things that combine to form the gametophyte. Remember that? Guess what a fern gametophyte looks like? This is just crazy. That it's true. The fern gametophyte is this, and you probably don't have a sense of how big that is. It's very small. It's millimeters big. And it actually, the gametophyte grows from the spore that drops from the giant leaves and then grows in the ground if it can combine with a male gametophyte. Water is required. How are we going to distribute these spores? You got to have some rain. So reproduction is still limited to places that are wet. The rest of the time we can survive because we have roots to pull water, but reproduction time, you got to have a flowing water to facilitate the combination of spores to grow the combination of gametes from the male and female gametophytes, because the spores themselves just grow into those guys right there. Those live in the soil next to the ferns. So the big fern plant, sometime go check it out and see if you can find some little itty bitty gametophytes growing near the big fern plants. Here's another really wild thing. Remember, it's the spore that grows into an adult gametophyte. The environment in which that spore lives determines whether the spore is going to become a male gametophyte and produce sperm, or a female gametophyte and produce eggs. The environment determines this. If there is scarcity, low nutrients, lots of crowding, not much resources, we're making male gametophytes, which produce lots and lots of sperm. Lots of, I say sperm, but they're male gametes. If there is wealth, glory, abundance, that's the word I was going for, abundance, then we're making female gametophytes, and guess what they do? One gamete. They make one gamete. Now, in the animal world, male and female is assigned based on the size of the gamete. The big gamete that you make one of them, and that's your contribution, that gets assigned female. And the male gamete where it's a smaller gamete and you make a bajillion of them, that's assigned male. And that's the biological definition, or that's how biologists negotiate what makes something male and what makes something female. Now, we talked about this way back in lecture 13, was it? Lecture 14? I don't know where we were. I don't know what lecture it was, but I know we talked about gender versus sex. Biological sex is different from gender. Ferns don't have gender. Ferns have biological sex, and it is not really binary. It's you pick depending on the environment that you're in, what is going to be most convenient for your species perpetuation. Oh my gosh, I love this. Should we talk about gymnosperms and the cool quality that they get? Okay, if you insist.